painting. Keep repeating.
It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
Welcome back everyone to A History of Horror, where we'll be going over 50 horror movies from the past 100 years. The 1960s brought a rapid change from what audiences had been used to. As the decade progressed, we began to see wholesale violence on screen become more common. This was punctuated on August 9, 1969, when the followers of Charles Manson killed several people in Hollywood, including actress Sharon Tate, the wife of Roman Polanski. Things got dark really quick, and as we moved into the 1970s, everything became harder.
All that blood and violence. I thought you were supposed to be the love generation.
This would become known as the Grindhouse era, a period when exploitation movies and other savage cinema rose in popularity. A few notable mentions are Blackula, Don't Look in the Basement, I Drink Your Blood, and I Spit on Your Grave. These weren't movies that you would see in mainstream cinemas. For these, you would have to go to the small cracker box theaters, typically on the bad side of town. These are the kind of movies that don't focus much on production quality as much as what the producers knew would sell. Gratuitous sex and violence were the new cash crop, and producers were out to create the kind of disturbing movie that would make the most money. This brings us to The Last House on the Left, which I think is one of the most graphic and disturbing movies of its time. It involved two of the biggest icons in modern horror, being directed by Wes Craven and produced by Sean Cunningham. Cunningham would go on to direct Friday the 13th, bringing us Jason Voorhees, while Craven would soon introduce us to Freddy Krueger. It starts off with a girl named Mary, who's about to celebrate her 17th birthday. She plans on going to a concert with her friend, but not before trying to score some weed from this sketchy guy. As they follow him to an apartment, they end up getting abducted by a group of psychopaths who recently escaped from prison. The girls are tortured and raped, and then the next morning they're taken to the woods where they're tortured and raped again. The plot and characters are all realistic, and I think that's what makes it so disturbing. However, one scene does display a rare sign of remorse. After they're done attacking the girls, there's a brief moment where they see their hands covered in blood, and they look at each other in disgust over what they've just done. It was a very human quality that isn't shown in many other horror movies. This idea that killers and maniacs don't like hurting people, but like any addiction, they can't stop doing it. Both Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer talked about this in their final interviews. Despite its disturbing nature, the filmmakers threw in some slapstick comedy involving the cops, who are both useless, as they typically are in horror movies. They even included a goofy soundtrack that feels very off-putting in contrast to the rest of the film. I think it was Craven's attempt at dark humor, but I personally don't think it worked. John Carpenter compared Last House on the Left to a strong cup of coffee in the morning. It was so disturbing that it was banned in the UK and several other countries for decades. Though it received an R rating in the United States, many theaters were reported to have destroyed the reels immediately after the premiere. These Grindhouse movies were a huge influence on both Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth. It was remade in 2009 with a large budget, and the remake spawned a few sequels. But without the campy footage like the original, the reboots failed to capture the same effect. Next week will be the final episode for a while, taking one of the scariest movies of all time, The Exorcist. Thank you for watching.